Good morning, one and all, to the day 2 of our online faculty development program based on outcome-based education. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the attendees, to all the panelists, and our esteemed speaker, Professor Sonia Gupta, who is the professor and principal at Amity School of Architecture and Planning, Amity University, Kolkata. She is an architect engaged in teaching and voluntary work. Professor Sonia Gupta has been educated at Jadavpur University, Kolkata and University of Sweden, having also been active in professional practice in the offices of DS Architects. She is now working in Amity School of Architecture and Planning through Center for Built Environment, a knowledge-based non-profit professional body in her city. She has sustained her interest in housing issues, rainwater harvesting, and sanitation for the urban poor. She has made a number of presentations in conferences, both in India and abroad, and has been an active member of the Indian Institute of Architects, West Bengal Chapter, since 1989. She is currently Secretary of Council for Green and Eco-Friendly Movement, the Associated Chambers of Commerce of India, GEM Association State Chapter. Ma'am, we welcome you and would like you to commence with your session.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much, Architect Jyotsna Gaur and Dr. Bipasha, Dr. Professor Sabharwal. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here on this platform. And I will start to share my screen. I don't know if either will work. Let me try this. Yeah, is it showing?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So yes, thank you once again, Dr. Bipasha, for having invited me to this wonderful platform. Only possible, I mean, it was always possible, but we were woken up to the fact that this is going to be the norm, as you were just discussing with Professor Sabharwal, that this is going to be the norm, the way ahead. And so we are across the country, but unified in one platform for this outcome-based education best practices in architecture. You know, I was looking at, I was listening to yesterday's deliberations, and I was thinking that my presentation, which says experiments in teaching, learning, penetrations, from studio to study, because that's why we were in the studio, and then suddenly one day we were lifted from the studio, and we all went beeline inside the studies of our students, and vice versa. So when I was listening to yesterday's deliberations, it was so full of knowledge, such erudition. I was a little unnerved, I should say, because today I'm going to talk about, you know, some very, very simple things. Things that we can do every day, things that probably many of you young faculty members are doing, the participants of this FDP are doing anyway. So if you think that, okay, you are already doing it and you don't want to listen to it, do tell me, I'll stop. But one thing I can tell you is that these simple things that we have been doing, we've been doing for a long time. It's not just me alone, but me and my entire brigade. And what I can tell you is that these are time tested, and these are definitely have yielded the kind of outcomes that we had envisaged for them already. So yes, I'm going to start off with the premise, with what our professors told us when we were in college or getting out of college, getting into the profession. We always heard this: oh, can architecture be taught? And then at that time, if we thought of getting into teaching, we were daunted by this: those who can do, those who can't teach. So in between, can architecture be taught, and those who can do and those who can't teach, we were in a bind as to how to really embark on this profession of teaching and teaching effectively, teaching to meet the outcomes that we have thought of. I'm primarily going to talk about undergraduate students because mostly have taught in undergraduate programs, only rarely in masters. So yes, undergraduate students, now they form our world. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about, of course, offline or physical, the studio mode that we have all been used to for all these years. And then I'm going to talk about the online or the virtual mode, which is what I say studio to study. So some very simple things, like I said, the offline mode. I've just labeled a few points, and as you can see, familiarizing, play acting, visualizing, asking, reality checking, owning, design thinking, recording and archiving, working in a team, being accountable, engaging, evaluating. These are some of the subheads I thought that we could elaborate our discussions on. So let's look at the first point, which is familiarizing. What is familiarizing? Architects, or the teaching of architecture, is always in small groups. So of course we know each other's names. They know our names, we know their names, but it is not just enough to get to know the names. It's important to be aware of the special attributes of the students. And while I'm going to talk about each of these points, I'm going to also say how it is true for application, um, for both students and us, because that term teaching learning is a wonderful term. I came across that term maybe 20 years ago. Now it's quite a mantra. But at that time, I was really shaken into understanding, what does teaching learning mean? And teaching learning is so much about the learning rather than the teaching. And so what I'm going to talk about, elaborate on these points, sorry, the 12 points that I've just raised. I'm going to talk about how that happens both ways. So familiarizing, we are getting to know their names, their special attributes, their family and socio-cultural backgrounds, and so they do to us. It didn't seem like an important thing to do maybe a few years ago, but it is now. And I will try to give you small examples of why that happened. We had a student from Nepal, and because in the first years we are trying to put them in a box and say, okay, design this or design that. He had a completely different kind of outlook. He had a different cultural background. He had a different kind of a family hierarchy, and therefore the hierarchy of spaces were also different. And we were not able to understand, and he was getting into a corner because he was not able to explain to us. Now, it took another faculty member who had come from a similar background, not from Nepal, but from a similar background, which is not the mainstream, to be able to understand what to do to get him out of his cocoon. And sure enough, it opened up doors, first windows, doors for him, and he became a completely transformed person. So I give a lot of stress, and we all give a lot of stress to this familiarizing. The second is play acting. I'm not going to call it role play as yet, because it is play acting when they are very young, when they come in their first semester or second semester, they're very young. And this play acting is a good thing for the bond and for the ability to understand how spaces are related to, mostly to human beings and their different activities. So we do a play acting. Play acting means that they will try to put together from whatever they have in the studio, tables and stools, they'll try to put together a living room scene where they're welcoming a guest. And then the guest happens to feel unwell and fall sick, and you have to make an impromptu bed. But through all of this play acting, what they're doing is they're taking measurements. They're learning to understand what are the attributes of the human body so that they can use it. And when they've got all this information, it's not just enough to produce sheets. What we make them do is when they have the sheets, it's a comparison. So Sheila may be a 1560 and Pradeep may be 1875. But what's the relation? So we tell them, well, Sheila is 0.83 or 85 of Pradeep. But hey, Sheila's arm and Pradeep's arm the same length. So that means you are learning to understand when you're designing a product, designing furniture, and then scaling it up slowly. How does that relate to the anthropometric dimensions? So that's one thing that we make them do, the constant correlation between different types of human beings. Then as they become older, we do role play. So here is um, one student presenting, and the rest of us, it could be a combination of teacher and student who will pose as the client. It could be the members of a household, it could be the top brass of some firm, but we sit there and we quiz, we crit the student as if we are the clients. And believe you me, when we do that role play, we can be very, very nasty, and we kind of prod each other to be nasty so that they are able to be prepared for the outside world, which is a rough ride, of course. The third thing is visualizing. Now, in visualizing, sketching is something that we do anyway. We make students do it. We do it. That's a given. I haven't elaborated on that. But using imagination, we have learned, we have seen that if you use it to make a very simple pop-up exercise. I mean, this is a very simple one. I couldn't get hold of more complicated ones that we had done, which is still lying in the studios or in their homes. But the pop-up exercise, when they've made a sketch, it's of a street, and how you can have slowly, we have gone through that exercise, how you can have an entire street folded onto just two pieces of paper is something that really calls for out of background uh, imagination, which we have really profited by. Uh, Observing. The visualizing is enriched with the observations and an everyday observation. So we will say, well, how many steps did you climb to get to the ground floor of your house? And chances are they are not going to be able to answer that when you ask them the first time. But the second time, they will be prepared. And then the other observations are, so how high and why? The older students will know, but the younger students will not know how and why. So yes, we are asking them, and when we are asking them, they are asking us in turn that, so why is a sill this high? I mean, we tell them, okay, the lintel is 2100 and the sill is 900, but why is that so? So the moment you're asking why, you'll never forget that how you can play around with the sill height. So similarly, we ask them, which side is the railing, left or right? Again, chances are they will be confused the first time round, but the next time round, they will come to class prepared. And then is the application of these observation skills. A very simple example again. So we show them a site plan, a very simple rudimentary site plan of Aiholi, and we tell them, well, here is the famous Durga temple, here is the Darkan temple. And then what we do is we show them a little bit of the detail, what it looks like. And then we ask them that in this photo, locate the Durga temple and the Darkan temple, and we give them a very small time. But this is a very good exercise for them to orient themselves, to recognize, to identify in 3D, and because the orientation is different. So they learn, and you give them a very short time to do this. So they learn to do this very quickly. And this helps immensely, we have seen, in reading drawings, in orienting themselves when they actually go to a site. And then we do things like, okay, so here is the temple, and there seems to be, we are talking about other things. There seems to be no centered deity. And what are the other deities which we can see around it? And then we ask a very simple question. What's the area? Now, the mathematically oriented ones will quickly get it. They will quickly extrapolate from the 10-meter line that they are getting, and they will tell you a rough idea of the area. But there are others who are not so quick on that very simple mathematics, so they will take some time. But if you kind of guide their minds into doing this. This really helps when they are dealing with a client, dealing with a drawing, and they have to quickly say, okay, so this is the area we have, and this is how much we can generate, and that really has helped us. The fourth point that we say, ask all the time. What, why, where, who, how, all the time. For everything that we ask you to do, ask us back in return. What is being designed or learned? Why are we designing this? Where is this going to be applicable? Ask all the time. And if we don't have the answers ready, both of you and I will get together to find out the answers. Then comes a reality check. We've seen that using the home as a laboratory is such a fantastic idea. I mean, nothing could be more enriching, nothing could be more informative as much as looking at your own home as a laboratory. So we tell students, okay, so go to look at your house, and which they do. And then what they do is they identify their own rooms, and they identify photographs with the plan, and then they come up with pros and cons. So they are able to understand what is good and what is bad, if we can put them in those two compartments, but maybe something in between. So what are the gray areas? They're able to come up with those. And yeah, so we tell them, look at the kitchen. The kitchen is such a fantastic laboratory. There's so many things happening in a kitchen. If you understand those systems, then you've understood everything. There is water coming in and water going back. I mean, wastewater going out, tap water coming out of the tap. Here is now no water is falling to the floor, and we are using so many electrical appliances. Well, we are not getting electrical shocks, and yes, sorry about that. Yeah, then there's the smoke coming out of the chimney. That's not disturbing us. We don't see anything. Everything is going back neat and sound, and yet this kitchen is working so profoundly well. So we need to understand how these are happening, and we tell them to constantly look at those processes. Reality checking of the neighborhood. Some people are extremely into their neighborhoods. They're so fond of their localities. In Bengali, we have a name for them. We call it para. So they very much invested in that. And then they come up with things that they identify. Some are very interested in their schools or colleges. And they come up, again, they study and they come up with things which could have been different. Now, what do we do with all that information? What do we do? What we do is we make them interchange. So my house has its pros and cons, and I would like to do something. I would like to change those. And I am the client. My friend or my peer becomes the architect. And so there's a role reversal. Then for my friend's house or school or neighborhood, I become the architect. So this role reversal works extremely well because we are learning both roles. We are learning to be an architect, we're learning to be the client. And that has immense effect on being able to deal with in a professional way. The sixth point that I have talked about is owning. Ownership is extremely important. And when I say owning, that's everything. I mean, so ownership, this is the Design Studio 3. And we a recent one, that is, and we embarked on this ownership system. We said, the only thing we told them was, it's got to be a residence, but it has to also incorporate some kind of profession. So they came up with a dancer's residence. They deliberated on what could be the name of the project. They developed the brief. All we did was provide a little bit of guidance here and there. I mean, I tried to constantly emulate myself on this TV BBC presenter called Tim Sebastian, who used to be a fantastic host because all he did was just guide the speaker in the right direction. So we would just do that, and they did everything by themselves: the naming, developing the brief. We allowed them to choose their own sites. Only the sites had to have an attribute, and and every little space down to the first 8 corner, everything they came up with. The seventh one is what we call as design thinking. And here, I have tried to, and we have all as a group tried to emulate the Socratic method. Maybe it's a little lofty to say the Socratic method, but still that's the overarching that umbrella that I would say that we have worked under. So leading the brain, leading the brain from one step to the next to reach the most logical solution. Now, this kind of design thinking involves never giving the answer. So one question will lead to another question. For example, here this is a housing design. And this is the ground floor, which is showing the parking layout and the open spaces and the roads. And what we were doing for design thinking, when I say that we were doing the Socratic way of thinking and not ever answering a question with an answer, but always coming up with another question to the first question, and then a third question to the second question, and a fourth question to the third question. So what we did was, here we explained that what it is. It has it's got different types of housing around a 10-acre site, and a central green, and then smaller greens. And then we zoomed into one of the buildings. And then, of course, after we always encourage them to stare at plans, look at plans, identify it, and ask questions. So here we are looking at one plan, and then, of course, they've identified the ramp, the staircases, the two staircases, the electrical room, pump room, and then the question that I would like to talk about now is the other lifts. So the question was, why are there two lifts? Why are the lifts of unequal size? So this question is asked by us, and the students will answer, two lifts to carry more people. So why are they of unequal size? Or the larger lift is going to carry freight. Freight, because this is a housing complex, so why would it carry freight on a regular basis? That's another question. And by these questions and the counter questions from us, we could have told them the reason straight away why we have one small lift and one large lift, but we didn't. The questions come in a way that the answer is so obvious at the end of it. So that is what we have been indulging in all the time. And this process is not just for something so practical, but also something more cerebral. Like, for example, they were shown a video of falling water and then read an article on falling water. And then there was a deliberation on why the design is so powerful. Why does it still hold such an important place in the design of a residence? So this is never answered. It just goes from question to question to question till the answer becomes so obvious. Yeah, and then this is something that I learned. The Council of Architecture had arranged for this faculty development program called Teaching to Learn and Learning to Teach, or maybe the reverse order. There, this absolute powerhouse architect, Sabo Francis, he had talked about iterations and how software designers do it all the time, and they call it agile development, and that we should be doing it all the time. So that's something that we have also imbibed, and maybe we did it without knowing these terms, but now that we know it, we do it a lot more forcefully. That yes, that is the thing to do. So these iterations are again about what are the different possibilities. So was the kitchen, now that you can see the kitchen, was the kitchen in a first iteration, was it supposed to be there, or was it somewhere else? So why did that position fail? Was the living room supposed to be here or to the left? Now, why did it find a position over here? Similarly, why did this lift go here? Why didn't the electrical riser go this side and the lift that side? So all these iterations we keep on doing with the student, and then and recording everything, which is going to be my next point, and so that we lose nothing. We have the entire process with us or at every point of time. So when you're at step 9, you can always refer back to step 2, to the iteration in step 2. Yes, 8 is recording and archiving, something I have to confess I'm very, very bad at. But I'm learning, and so is everybody else, that the recording is extremely important. Whatever is happening needs to be recorded, because posterity will tell you what went right and what went wrong. And so this workshop that we have conducted, a couple of years back, with Dr. Joy Sen, who was he's professor of Department of Architecture, Region Planning, IIT Kharagpur. He had come to Amity to do this workshop, and we were sure that we recorded each and every step that happened. So all the sketching that happened, then the models that got built, up until the last the putting up of the work. And this workshop was a very simple one. It was about introducing signage to a heritage precinct, but it was we recorded it well so that we understood how we go, what we did right and what we did wrong. And the 9th thing that I would like to talk about is working in a team. We all know how important it is, but how do we do that? How do we already start that exercise while the students are yet studying? And so we've tried this. We've tried the vertical cross section of students when we are looking at the outcomes of our tour, and it's very interesting because of the different levels of understanding, students are working at different and looking at the tour and whatever they're seeing on the tour in a completely different way. So the outcomes when they come back and they want to put whatever they have learned into tangible, I'm not saying black and white, but tangible, recognizable forms, then it's taking on. We had these panels which that they made themselves, and then what they did was the junior years or the second years were very adept with model making, so they made these 3D representations of the places they visited, whereas the younger ones were sketching and the older ones were doing in-depth research into what happened in the socio-cultural context and why we are still visiting those places after so many years, what we're learning from them, the ones who are aiming for a Louis Kahn Trophy entry. And so this entire cross-section worked together and they learned from each other. And the presentation at the end of that, that tour and the summer after the tour was extremely enriching for everyone. I remember the whole university had come to see this, and they were absolutely, the vice chancellor had to leave because he had to go somewhere, and he called me and he told me that I'm absolutely overwhelmed having seen what the kind of production that can be done by students just from an educational tour. Being accountable is so very important. I've just put up something over here, which is a student from an engineering college, and it's so important to think like a student and sometimes even to act like one. I mean, we all do it very, very, very easily. In architecture, it's not so difficult because we will go to a studio. I mean, in a studio, we will go and we will sit on a student's chair, and very often we have the students sitting beside us. So yes, it's important to think and act like a student. Students know the pitfalls. They know where to sit and what to do to get the teacher's attention or not. And that's okay. I mean, that they are just being students, but it is extremely important for us to understand why they do what they do. Otherwise, we'll never be able to get their confidence. So feedback, it's important. I mean, we have in Amity, we have we have a feedback system because we already have an ERP, like Vandana ji was talking about yesterday. We already have an educational ERP. And that is called Amazon after Amity. But and it really helps because it has everything recorded, every student's attendance, every student's percentages, internal marks, external marks, everything gets wonderfully recorded in that ERP. And yes, and feedback too. So students have have a window of that is a time window to give in their feedback for professors. But that's a cul-de-sac. It's a blind one because we don't know who said what. We just get to see the comments, and we see how much they will mark us on a scale of 1 to 10. But I always feel that feedback should not be summative, because summative can be colored. I mean, summative is at the end of a semester. So that means you have gone through, maybe one day you were late and your professor said, don't come in, or you didn't give a submission on time, that gets colored. But if it is a formative feedback, then we can really build on it as we are going along. And it's so important to build, because that's how we are using feedback positively, constructively. So just a few examples of what kind of feedback, formative feedback we have received from students. Um, because we tend to concentrate a lot on RCC and steel, we have students asking, perhaps they can't ask this in class, but it's an overview. So they say, isn't there any other material to learn about? And if you tell us what details you will look at in a particular week ahead of time, it helps to orient ourselves. So yes, of course, we can do that. And then in design, they would like to know why we choose a certain building type. Why is hospital design in this semester? Why is a commercial complex in a different semester? What is the why behind it? They would like to know. And we never thought about it before they told us, but now we do tell them. And somebody has says that, well, I can't, every day I can't show any progress in design. Is it possible to work with individual timelines? It seems difficult at first, but it is possible that everybody has a different timeline, except the start and finish date remains the same. So yes, we have tried to incorporate that as well. And then services. Some students are not at all interested in that part, and they say, why can't we just know the spaces? Why do we need to know electricity? What is the source of electricity, transmission, and water distribution? And that, can't we go to our terrace right now? Can't we go and see how the pipes are being connected with valves to the pipes to the bathrooms of the individual floor? And this is something that keeps, that really gives us the impetus to grow. 11 is engaging community. And this is extremely significant, not just because it shows that you have a compassionate heart, but because this compassion can be substantiated with things that we can do as architects, as students of architecture. Later it's difficult when you come into the profession. It's so difficult to be able to do something constructive. But yes, with students it was possible. We came to know of this shelter home for traffic children who needed, and traffic children can be very young. I mean, they can be as young as 6 or 7 years old. And so they need a place to play. And they did have a little playground, but they didn't have any equipment. So they approached us, and well, we came to know, and then they approached us, and then of course they didn't have any funds for that. So the play equipment had to be upcycled from waste products, or recycled or upcycled, and we got a funding source for just minimum funds for transport and hardware, or paint, or stuff like that, as per actuals. And of course, the consultancy for the design and the labor, most importantly, had to be ours. And the only thing the brief said was low maintenance, safety, and no damage to existing green cover. So this is what happened. This was the site. This was a small little patch that there was there, which they wanted to convert to a play equipment. And the students started everything from digging the soil to making seats out of tires, and then using the tires to make the play equipment. So putting them in place and then painting them and making different types of play equipment. So this became the the one which was the tunnel. Um, and then finally, this went from the picture on the top left to the one on the right, which had all the colorful equipment. And I believe that the young people, the young inhabitants of this place, are extremely happy that they have this this area to play about. And the other exercise in engaging community that we have done is one of the residents of the community we visited had told us that we don't have place and we can't invest in furniture all the time, but yes, there is a baby and the baby will grow and we need a piece of furniture which will grow with the child. Is that possible? So we put the problem to the students, and this was not in Amity, this was done by Omdayal students. And yes, they came up with a wonderful solution of flexibility. So I will share that with you. Um, so this was made out of waste material cardboard as a prototype, like I just said. And so because the prototype, the hinges are not in place. So this is a bassinet or a crib for a child. And of course, it needed storage. So those are the storage units. And then the other side also has storage. And then this will transform into, as the baby grows, this will transform into something else, which you will just see. This is a prototype, but this can be turned into something which is buildable. So now this transforms into two chairs and a table. This is one chair, the other. Yes, so this will now become a table and another chair too. So this was an experiment, and we have shared this design with the community. And yes, I cannot explain this wonderful feeling which comes from being able to do this for a community. The 12th one is evaluating and assessing, and we are still struggling with this a little bit. I'll tell you why, because we have been so used to submissions on time. It's time, that's the deadline. But is that the way we should be doing this? Can we allow submissions to come? Can we stress on the completion of the submission rather than the deadlines? We've been doing this now because we can understand that whereas we have taken students who are almost all capable of executing a complete project, the timelines that we tell them to is not feasible, and we have to be able to respect that. So we allow submissions to come so that we have complete submissions, but yes, the deadlines vary. And what do? Do we punish or not punish? Do we penalize those students who are coming in late? Is something that we are still grappling with. But we are allowing submissions to come in much beyond deadlines as long as they are complete projects. And the other thing about assessment is that we have profited a lot by doing peer assessment, and firstly self-assessment and then peer assessment, because when it may be that some teachers are a little harsh, a little too not giving in terms of marks, and then they will probably have a different idea. So when it is corroborated by peers and your own selves, then it really helps for them to have a holistic idea, more comprehensive, complete idea of what really the assessment and the evaluation of that project should be. Yes. So now I will move on to, how am I doing on time? I think I'm doing okay. Yeah. So I will talk about some of the online things I've been doing for the past year, and I see that there will be time. So I will also like to talk about some other things. Let me just finish this online part. So online has been initially quite a difficult task for us, because we didn't know whether students were there but not there. I mean, the students are there, we can see them logged in, but are they there really? Are they listening? Because we were so used to a physical classroom or a studio where we, by the twitch of an eye, we know whether the student is paying attention, has understood, or is somewhere else. But now we don't see their faces at all. So how do we deal with that? Unless we see the students' reactions, how do we know that this is the way forward? And how we have our videos on most of the time, but they will plead internet issues and stuff, and they will not put their videos on. So yes, that has been a trying time. And then what many of us did was we did this round robin discussions, interaction and debating. It's not just interaction, a debate. So this debate would be about and so it depended on who we were asking. So it was like a round robin, going round and round. So we asked the average student, we asked the inattentive student, we asked the studious student, the thinker. And as we went around, very often you would say that so if you are able to see us, why don't you take a screen grab and share? So that would give us a sense that they are looking at something that we are also looking at, because if and it had to be done in a small time. So this continuous engagement with the interaction, the debate, and the screen grab and the screen share kept everybody on their toes, us and students, faculty and students all together, so that we didn't feel like we were distanced. Somebody was sitting in Sikkim or Nepal, and we were sitting here in Kolkata, or somebody else was in Rourkela. It didn't matter. I mean, it was because of this continuous back and forth, we felt like we were sitting in the same room. Flipping classrooms. A lot is being said about flipping classrooms, and I began to think that we have always flipped classrooms, because our studios were flipped anyway. The studios were where the students were working, and we were mentoring them, we were guiding them. So the studios are the flipped classrooms. So now the time has come to reflip. Why is that? Because now, if they're going to be working during class time, we cannot possibly see what they're working on. They can't hold a camera and work, or at least they can do it for a short while, not for most of the time. So the classroom has become reflipped. So now we want them to work quite a bit at home, and then come here, and then we are looking at their work. So we are the critiquing, the feedback that we are giving, all that has to happen during class hours. So it's for us, for architecture, it's a reflip. That's how I look at it. And initially, of course, we were working on MS. We're still working. MS Teams is our platform, and MS Teams is a wonderful platform, because it can it can hold so much of resource. There are class files, so the class notes are over there. Any resource that we are giving them, any links that we are giving them, or any books, PDFs is there. Submissions, most importantly, any assignment, anything that we are doing in class, maybe writing something, discussing something, and whatever we discuss, there are writers in class. So there will be two writers who are writing, and on that day, maybe they are not thinking so much. That's okay. Then the next day, somebody else is writing. So all that whatever we are doing gets submitted, and those submission deadlines are instantly visible. So if it's come 2 minutes late, 1 minute late, everything is there. We are not going to penalize them, but we know that it's all there. It's all very much a part of the team. So yes, the various tools, and I'm sure most of you are using these tools. So Padlet is such a fantastic tool, because so many people are able to write on it at the same time. And Padlet also allows you to upload drawings, and so whatever you have to write, you're writing, and you as faculty are able to see that, and you're immediately commenting on this. So what is happening is iterations are happening again and again. So they start writing something, and because they are writing, this thing gets very well settled in their head. So Padlet I have found a very, very useful tool. And similarly, OneDrive, because we are using Outlook. So OneDrive is a fantastic tool. You know, it's an entire table here. They were asked to read 2 articles and then comment on the 2 different houses. So they're doing it at the same time. You are able to see exactly who's writing what. A little different from a Padlet, because a Padlet will allow you to write only in your own color. And here we have several aspects that we are talking about. And here there's a fun element here, because anybody can write in anybody's box. So it's like the whole class is standing in front of a big whiteboard or blackboard and writing at the same time. So what they will do is somebody will very cheekily write in somebody else's box. But that's fun, and that fun part is very important to include as well. So this I also found as an important tool. Then Mentimeter as polls, these constant polls that we can take with the help of Mentimeter, that really works well to engage students and to also get feedback from them as to how to move forward. Flipgrid, Slido, Kahoot, all different types of software tools which help you. Kahoot is quiz, Flipgrid is videos, Slido again a polling way, which really fortifies the teaching, the online teaching, and continuous engagement. And two apps that we have found very effective is the AW app and the Freehand Envision. Both allows us to sketch like we would have sketched physically with a pen, to tell them what they've done, and just to kind of guide their minds into doing something. So the AW app and the Freehand Envision has really been very powerful tools as far as the teaching of architecture is concerned. So that's about using tools. And the fourth thing that I have really profited in this time is by being fallible. I mean, we are by nature, human beings are fallible. We make mistakes, but these mistakes were deliberate. So what I did was, when there was, I would stop, silence, miss words, use wrong words. For example, in this the aggregate descriptions, I've written well graded, I've defined well graded, poor graded, gap graded, but when I've put the labels, I've deliberately mixed up. And as sure as anything, there will be a couple or a little more than that who will say, but ma'am, this is not right, you have written this. And the moment there is one student waking up to tell you that you've made a mistake, the whole class is on high attention, because sir or ma'am has made a mistake, and that's a big deal. So therefore, through these mistakes, this will become ingrained. This is like I said, that every action would have had an outcome. So this is the kind of outcome that we've had, that the moment they are looking at our mistake, they become very conscious, and that learning becomes very deep. And for them, then this will not be a mistake. So this is just a very small example. This can be done in so many different ways. I've tried it in history lessons, in design, and with fantastic effect. Yeah. Being accountable, feedback. Yes, feedback is so much possible with Google Form. Keep floating these, and these are open for a long time. So over time, maybe a month also, you can see the responses that are coming in. I imagine that I always talk very clearly, and then I get the response saying that, no, we didn't understand your language. So it's such a fantastic feedback. I stop, pause, use simpler language. And that's a learning that I've taken back. And then touring virtually. I don't know whether any of you have tried this. If you have, then probably I'm just wasting my breath. But just very quickly, I would like to talk about how tour is such an important part of our curriculum, and such heartbreaks, such heartaches and breaks for the students when they discover that, oh, no tour this year. So we went for a virtual tour, and we had to sit with the organizers. I'm not naming the organizer right here. But we had to sit with the organizers and explain what exactly we wanted. We didn't want YouTube videos we stitched together. So we had to have them go to the place and walk through it themselves, stop when we asked them to stop, look around, so that we felt like we were actually sitting on the maybe on the shoulders of the person who's walking. And it was a wonderful combination of this kind of uh, looking at old heritage precincts, and then looking at what the city looks like really, old Delhi, and then framing the monuments, and then also combining some drone images which they could take, and the stitching together with some fun elements like this one was extremely enjoyable, not just for students but for us too. It was a very, very enjoyable experience of having toured. We did three cities. We did Delhi, Agra, and Varanasi, and it was such a learning and fun experience. Even though many of the students had never been to Delhi and Agra, I think they were very, very well acquainted with this. Um, so the two things that I wanted to talk about, like I said, which we have time after having talked about the simple things that we do offline and online, um, is the preparation for class. I mean, how do we prepare for class? And beyond the obvious one, that is reading up on the topic, reading up on the content, and making a PowerPoint or making some other kind of presentation, flash, or uh, I don't know, any other way of communicating. That part is a given. But how do we otherwise prepare ourselves? I have really profited by doing this, reading everything. I mean, reading the newspaper to Twitter. And I remember a very, very famous architect saying that if you read the newspaper every day, you learn so much about architecture. Maybe it was a hyperbole, but still, I would say that it's for me and for my faculty members, it's been a very revealing experience that we read everything, so that when we are telling students, we are drawing freely from every resource. And architecture is such a holistic discipline that we can draw from so many sources to exemplify what we are saying. So we do that really all the time, and we will of course continue to do that. One thing that we have learned over time is that we should not be underestimating or overestimating our own capability and our students' capability. That is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where we overestimate ourselves and we underestimate students, um, or sometimes vice versa. But it just doesn't happen. It doesn't work because it puts you in a little groove where we can't see everything around you. So it's always good to take a reality check of who's capable of doing what, and always encouraging the students to do what they can do. I mean, some people are good at oration, some people are good at uh, getting down to doing the brass tacks. So we have to be able to nurture that, and uh, I always encouraging to them to do that. So again, some things that we do, and we ask students to do it all the time. So note down whatever strikes. It could be anything that's special. It could be a color. It could be a tiny space that's designed. It could be a patch of green. Whatever catches your eye as special, we take and we note it down. We take photos, and right now the world is screenshots. We take screenshots and photos of whatever we see, spaces, green areas. I mean, we don't need internet photos anymore. I've just used cartoons, and I try never to use internet photos for whatever lessons that I teach, because that also has quite an effect on the students. And the another thing that I do is that I say and write whatever I understand. And if I don't understand something, I don't say it. I just eliminate it. Doesn't matter if it's part of the syllabus. If I cannot explain to myself, I cannot explain to anybody else. So I just very ruthlessly, I would remove that. And yes, so the other thing, the most important thing is collaborate, collaborate, and collaborate. So whether it is, especially with the practitioners, so whether it's collaborating on a workshop, a brick workshop, collaborating on a carpentry workshop, so that students are actually building it, or it's collaborating with, so this collaboration is very important with across faculty members, across schools, and across practitioners, which who are close to your city on a very, very regular basis. Uh, I remember reading that in when you're in school, whatever is called copying is called collaborating when you are in the profession. So yes, it's very, very important to collaborate at various levels. And just like we encourage students to collaborate with other students in your city, using NASA as a platform, so that, and this is something I thought if there is time, I will discuss, and there is time. So I would like to discuss this. I have time, right, Bipasha? Dr. Bipasha, I have time?
Yes, ma'am. You still have half an hour to go.
Okay, I don't think I need half an hour, but let me just discuss this. And I'm sure that this is something that people would have experienced. Everybody would have experienced. One size does not fit all. And we have to have special cases. And I have given some names to these special cases. And I will also talk about how we have been able to make some sense out of these special cases. And that I think could also be a learning experience for most of us. This person I call the perfection impersonator was a student who was very good. I mean, could sketch very well, could draft nice. And this is the initial semester, so he could come up with some drawings quite well. But what would happen was that we would at the end of the class, he would always submit a blank sheet. So initially we would ask, oh, so why is it blank? I saw that you had completed more than 50% of your sketch or of your proposal or of your building construction sheet. What happened? So we'd say, well, I rubbed it out. Why? Because it's not good enough. And he maintained this sentence, because it is not good enough, through the semester, so that every end of each semester, all we got from him were empty sheets. And of course, we couldn't evaluate or assess those empty sheets. And even the continuous assessment was not possible, because it happened every day. It would happen before we could react. He had rubbed it all out. So we had the most difficult time with this person, because we knew that he's a capable person. And his parents were very proud of the fact that he was such a perfectionist. Whereas if you really look at it, it was a condition of the brain that he did not know that he was giving up something blank, which couldn't be evaluated for perfection or imperfection. So I call it the perfection impersonator. We had to really work with this fellow for a long time. I mean, I don't know whether you have faced such people or not, but we had to concentrate on his body language, that we could catch him the very moment he was going to rub out everything he had done. We had to catch him at that moment and take away his sheet and offer him a blank sheet again. So he has already graduated. So you can imagine that we had a very, all of us faculty members had a very difficult time trying to make him give some tangible amount of work. And he was a very smooth talker. So he would always convince us that something was wrong somewhere and that he was going to submit the next day. And the next day never came. So we really had to work with him to be able to get the best out of him. And thankfully, he has graduated. He's an architect by now. I would like to believe that he's already in a fold of some architect working. And yes, he did, with his skills, he did find a very good placement. So let's see what he does with life, and we are waiting for that feedback. The second one is a wall perceiver. Now, what is a wall perceiver? This girl, she used to always, she told me, but whenever there is a submission date, I see a wall before me. Now tell me, ma'am, why would I walk into a wall? I will never go to the wall. So I said to her, well, of course you will not go to a wall. I see a wall too. But together maybe we can build, we can make a door to go through the wall. And believe you me, the other side of the wall is a very interesting space. And so again, we had to work on her to be to tell her that we can build this door together. And this took such a lot of time, because this was just the opposite. She was working quite regularly on her sessionals, on her studio class, whether it was design or construction or services. She was working quite regularly. But the moment we said, well, you know, you have a couple of weeks more, that was the time she stopped working and she ran away. And she would not come to class. And she would come to the gate and then take another auto and go back. So we had to work with her again and to build that door, to make that door together so that it was okay to walk into a wall because there was a door to get to the other side. Now that took time again, and a lot of patience from faculty. The third one was the railway dreamer. He told us that I've been forced into doing architecture. I don't want to study architecture. I want to do something with railways. I want to design trains. And I want to design railway tracks. I want to understand why is it that we have so many platforms at the station and how do they melt into two tracks up and down? So we had to work with him to tell him that, well, you know, if you're going to learn the various tricks of the trade as architects do, you're going to become a planner, and you can of course work with the planning of you could be part of the railway system and you can do this. So again, this was a lot of convincing from our end, working together with him. He would not design a house, let alone a piece of furniture. A house was not for him. Commercial space is not for him. We had to wait till it was getting to an urban design scale. And believe you me, the moment he reached that urban design scale and he had taken up planning as an elective, it was a different him. So we had to bear with him, and it was when he found, I keep telling him that, you know, he and planning found each other. It was an immediate hit, and now we have a very, he's still a student here. So we have a very interested, very involved student who's not only doing his work but is also managing to mentor his peers. So yeah. Then there's another one who's a self-benchmarker. He's the one who will only do things he's good at, and he won't do the others. So he's not going to draw, he's not going to sketch, he's only going to make models. And for him, we had to tweak submissions because we had to allow him to take photographs of his model as plan, as section, as elevation. He just wouldn't do anything else. So we had to tweak, we had to modify ourselves and our expectations to get and because, you know, we could see that these are all talented people and we don't want to lose them because they have a certain bent of mind. And so on and so forth about the copy paste. This habitual copy paster was one like a habitual liar. He would copy paste everybody else's submissions into whatever his and submit it. So again, we had to work with him, saying that it was not that he was not capable, but he was just like it was a habit. He had to do it. So we had to again take one step backward with him each day and come to the stage where there was nothing to copy paste and that was only him and his work. So again, that had to be a process. Then there is another one. The hands-on worker is he will only do workshops. He will do carpentry. He will do all of that brick and whatever you tell him, whatever workshops he can get, but he's not going to sit and draw anything. So again, we had to tweak submissions. We had to see how we could employ his skills for our submissions, like we said. And then the last person that I would like to talk about is the underdog. He imagined that he was the underdog, that he would always do the best at the last time, and he would come up with something really fantastic at the very end. And again, we had to tell him that it's not magic. The process of design is not magic. It won't happen. It won't fall from the sky. And you don't understand me. Was his dialogue. So yes, we had to and we had to tell him that we understand him, uh, and that the process of design would have to begin from the very first day. And yes, that was also a process wherein he would sit in my room in my office every day for half an hour, and I would have to spend that time with him. And happily, these are all success stories, but there are many others which we are struggling with. And I don't know whether you have to face such predicaments, but we do on a regular basis. And this involves not just counseling the students, but counseling the parents, and on a regular basis. And this has become a big part of our teaching. So yes, I would like to talk about the outcomes just a little bit, because I have been trying to thread in the outcomes as we are going along, but a few outcomes that we have been able to identify very clearly is the shift. So there was a favorite question that we got asked. We asked our students for batches after batches, why do you want to study architecture? But now this question has changed, and we are asking, what do you want to do with a degree in architecture? So that itself has changed to an outcome-based question, and we do get very informed answers. The students in the last 2-3 years, or let's say 5 years, have been very informed about what they want to do with a degree in architecture. Working with ERP, like I was mentioning about ERP, and we already have an ERP in place, education ERP, and OBE. So that's the first step towards OBE, that we have everything under record through our Amazon and MS Teams, and that is something that we are very proud of. And one thing that we tried to do, other than reaching out to community, was to create an enabling environment whereby we were able to reach out to local authorities with a complete project proposal. For example, this was we are located, that is Amity University Kolkata is located in Newtown, Kolkata, which is a completely new development part. I mean, Kolkata, as you know, is an organic city, but this is on the northeastern side, and that is Newtown, which is already going to be is being planned as a smart city, and it is developed by the Housing and Infrastructure Development Corporation, HIDCO. So what we did was the entire proposal which the students had brought about at a particular stretch of Newtown. We approached of course, it was an enabling environment. It was us, it was Vice Chancellor, and then we actually went to the officials of HIDCO, and we first we shared with them our soft copies and hard copies, and they told us that, why didn't you come and make a presentation? So here we were very proud that we could actually do that. The final year students of urban design could actually present to this entire board sitting here their work. And I have to say that this was very well appreciated. And the CMD of HIDCO has not only appreciated it, but also recommended it to a Deloitte, which is now looking after the smart city, the transformation of Newton into smart city, the planning initiatives. So they recommended it to them too, and we had the good fortune of also presenting it to them. And as final year students, it was a wonderful opportunity, and I believe that this kind of an outcome can only do wonders for not just this batch of students, but for the subsequent batch of students who are looking at this kind of an exercise. Is going to be really good for all of them. So yes, I will come to an end to my presentation. Some of the references not properly done, I know, but still the acknowledgements and presentation and the references. And thank you very much for your patient listening, and I will very much like to interact.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah,
For
thank
the
you.
wonderful presentation. So
Thank
let
you.
us start with the question answer session.
Yeah. Absolutely. So should I stop sharing or should the screen?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
may stop sharing.
Stop share. Yeah. Right.
Okay, ma'am, there is a question from architect Kamini Singh.
Yeah.
She's asking, you have discussed about observing and applying, and what are your suggestions on inculcating analytical skills in the students?
Analytical skills. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you remember, we talked about debate and interaction, and then putting all the thoughts in one place. So when we are in class physically in a studio or a classroom, this the debate is what triggers the analysis. And what we had done previously is, because we are if we just talk, it will be lost. So we had these two writers who were constantly writing what was going on, and so through that debate the analysis would progress. And we have seen that, in subsequent years, the same topic can lead to different analysis altogether. And this is something that we have enjoyed doing, depending completely on the students' mental, cerebral powers or prowess, if I may say so. The analysis goes in different directions. So that is absolutely possible to do that. Yeah. It's a very good question. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderfully answered. There is also one question from Shubham Jain. First of all, he's applauding your presentation and he's saying that
Thank
there
you.
is
Thank you so
very
much.
interesting
Thank you so much.
exercises have been shown within the engaging community segment, and outcome is also wonderful. He is also asking that in teamwork, every time we are assigning a group project, only one or two students are actually working in that group, while other members are just enjoying the awarded marks, and it also leads to demotivation of the working students. So what could be the efficient way to tackle this?
Also, very good question. Yes, we have gone through this predicament. Yeah. So what we did, there are two things we did for this. One is to reduce the size of the group. So we will not have, initially when we were not so much aware of this issue, we would have groups of 5, 4 or 5. Now we've brought down the group to never more than 3. And that's one way. And the other is, so when a particular student doesn't work, it takes a bit of work from our side, because we have to identify what that student is good at. Everybody is good at something. So you identify that what that a student who is habitually not going to do any work is good at, and you have that the work that you assign will have to be centered around that. So without his work, nobody else can work. He or she. I'm saying he with a bias, because most of our boy students are like that. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, ma'am. I do agree that, we can condition our exercises according to the students, that,
Yes.
every student has his own
Yeah,
talents and they have their own learning curve.
Yeah.
And there is one more question from architect Kanika Verma. She has said that, when we are making ourselves fallible, so, we are actually also, pointing out our own mistakes in front of the students. So, we also run into the danger of lowering our own credibility in front of them. So what is your, suggestion in that case?
So, Kanika, are you talking about the fact that I said we need to be fallible to get their attention? Is that the part? I think that's probably the part.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that is exactly.
Yeah. So, you see, because this I mean, as human beings, we will make mistakes, and I think it's always good to accept that I can make a mistake as much as you can, because then they will also learn to own up for their own mistakes, and that is a step forward. But the other thing is that when you're deliberately fallible, then the moment they tell you, but ma'am, you said this and it is not matching with what you've written, is that's the time you say that, oh, thank goodness you noticed. I thought that this will go unnoticed. Right? So therefore you're telling them that I did this deliberately. And because then you're attending your class, they will be even more cautious and conscious that this might happen in this ma'am's or this sir's class anytime. So yeah, it's so the moment they discover, they point out your mistake, you say that I thought nobody noticed it. So then they know that you've done it deliberately. But the other part of making a mistake, we all make mistakes. And I think it's good to own up. It doesn't take down our credibility at all. Because we have so many other departments to reach out and tell them that yes, we are working on an everyday basis to improve ourselves so that we can improve you. So I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Then there is a question by Ms. Nishita Keria. She's asking, what are the innovative ways you've adopted in architectural design studio in the online medium of education? I think it was explained in ma'am's presentation. We can just summarize it. And
Design, I think the question is about design, right?
yes, ma'am, it's visible in the Q&A.
Particularly about the design, how in architectural design did we,
yeah, studio.
So design studio, yes. So the usual steps in design we had to modify, in the sense that case studies had to be only secondary, whereas we stress so much on primary case studies. And there is one experiment we did too. We eliminated, because primary case study was not possible at all, we eliminated case studies as an experiment to see what comes out of it. That's one experiment we did. The other thing that we are all used to in design development, wherein we expect that there will be a conceptual development, which we will be able to also sketch on. We've used these various tools to do that, and very effectively that has happened. And we have stressed and stressed and stressed on models. Earlier, the stress was there, but during the online time, we said, get anything, source anything, cardboard boxes, paper, ribbon, doesn't matter what, whatever you throw. You're ordering food all the time because we are cooped in. So your Domino's boxes, anything, don't throw. Use everything to make a model. And this has really helped in the design process, that we've encouraged, and they've made, I mean, so if they would have made 3 study models, they've made 10 study models. More than 3 times they've made study models, and that has really, really helped, because they at home, they can't say, oh, I forgot to get glue, oh, I forgot to get this. Nothing, it's all there in front of you. Get it and do it. Yeah.
Yes, I think, and then there's a open statement which is saying that, in today's time, move from preaching to teaching to help them learn. So your opinion on this statement?
Preaching to teaching, yes. When we had learned, that was years ago, as you can understand, it was a lot of it was one-sided, right? We went, whether it was a studio, and if we asked a professor, he would come and make a huge circle somewhere on our conceptual layout, and then walk away. And we had no idea what was the circle meant to be, and we didn't have the courage to ask. Yeah. So we encourage students that there is nothing to fear. I'm not going to, none of the faculty members are going to threaten you in any way, intimidate you in any way. So feel free to ask all the time. Unless you're satisfied with the whys in the house, don't do it. It's okay, we will give you time. I remember one student who would just sit in class and say, I don't know why I have to do it. And there were so many questions in her head. So I told her, do one thing, go to the library. And we have a very good library. So I said, just look at Ching's books. Doesn't matter. Francis Ching. Just look at, we had all his entire collection. Just go look at his books. Don't come to class. I'll give you attendance. No problem. We spent an entire week sitting in that library looking over Ching's and other books also. Entire week. So you can imagine 7 classes into 5 days. 35 classes she just spent in that library. And I did not tell her anything at all. I said, just look. Look at what is the production of this individual, and you look at other things too. And by the end of that week, the student came back, and the transformation is absolutely magical. She didn't discover that she was so, I'm not saying intuitive, being intuitive is a good thing, because we have to have intuition and reason. But she just unearthed this absolute well of intuition. Whenever you threw a design at her, she was, her instantly her take was fantastic. So I think it was a lot about getting this what should I say, the confidence in the student. Yeah, that yes, you can do this, and if you are not convinced, it's okay. There have been students who, despite being talented, said it's too much work. I want to do commerce and I want to chill. We said that's absolutely fine. That's your path. Please take it. Not a problem. We did not encourage such students to stay, though we realize that that person has talent. But so it has to work in both the ways, in both the extremes. I think that comes with a lot with like I said, familiarizing. That first step is very, very important. If you familiarize this, the way the minds work, and their minds will work differently. If you do that, then I think that the whole path becomes easier. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely, I think.
Yeah,
And there is one more question which is asking that how do you, encourage and motivate students who are, struggling with the academic curriculum, and how do you give them formative feedback, as you mentioned in your slide? How do you do that in your own classes?
So can you just read that question once, just frame that question once more?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
sorry.
It is saying that how do you motivate students and give them formative feedback, especially in the case of students who are struggling with the academic curriculum?
Yeah, okay. So one of the ways I've just mentioned, that you have to design a way for them, in the sense that so an entire week when this student was actually sitting in the library, there was nothing productive coming out of that student. And we had to, minus that 1 week from her life. I mean, as far as submissions were concerned, because the motivation was working in a different way. There are students who are very good. I mean, like I said, each student has a different area of expertise. So there is a student who's very good in mathematics, very good in theory of structures, and later in urban planning and stuff like that. But when it comes to, there's an empty site and you have to begin somewhere, you have all your ingredients ready with you, your case studies or your literature study or your your religion, your matrix, everything, but it draws a complete blank. Cannot take that leap of faith. So what, for such students, and I don't know whether you're asking about such a student, what I have done and profited by it is sitting with everything. There's an empty blank sheet with all whatever there is already, all the homework done, and then I start, just making random sketches on the piece of paper. And of course, I'm doing it with the intention of that every line having a meaning. But what happens is I don't leave that paper with that student. Once I've done something, it's like holding a hand, and when you first move on to the escalator, it's like that. You hold somebody's hand and you take them to the escalator. So I do that, and I take that paper away with me. But that iteration that we did together stays in the brain, and that really helps in translating it into his or her own work. This I have seen at Profit. Because if I let the paper be, then there would be danger of copying, and then the student wouldn't learn.
Yes, yeah. True. I think everybody's having a lot of positive comments in the chat box. People are saying this. It's a wonderful presentation and amazing narration. And all the segments, the online, offline, both the parts are wonderful. So shall we have a tea break now? Yeah, ma'am, I would like to hand over to Bipasha, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful presentation.
Pleasure.
Now, the only way we can felicitate you is through this particular message. So I'm just sharing this message. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. and hope to see you again and connect to you again for
Absolutely.
any other program or any other faculty development program maybe.
Absolutely. I'll be so honored as I am honored today. And it was a wonderful experience sharing this with you. Before I did it, I was not very sure that many of you are probably doing all this. So it's really a wonderful feeling that, yes, I have been able to share all this with you. And I look forward ever again, whenever you ask me, I will definitely be there.
Definitely,
Thanks
ma'am.
so very much.
Online platform would be the best, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much once again.